In the name of Almighty God, the gracious, the merciful. One of participants from our group, he or she has asked about romanticism and romantic era. I'm gonna answer his question because participant was interested to have answer of romanticism, what is romanticism and what is romantic era. In regard to his answer, romantic movement or romanticism, romantic era, it started late 18th century and early 19th century. And it was international movement, philosophical and artistical movement that flourished in early 19th and late 18th century. In this age, poets, artists, they flourished and they were free thinkers. They wrote freely, they worked freely, and they broke the shackle of new classicism and Roman Greeks' influence in poetry and artistic work. In romanticism, romantic era, romantic writers, they broke the shackle of old traditional movements like new classicism and idea of Roman Greeks. Though they idolized medievalism and they took certain idea from medievalism, their you could say painting, their arts, and they use it in their poetry, but they didn't idolize their way of writing. They wrote in their own style. Take the Wordsworth, take other writers like William Blake, or you could say P.B. Shelley, or you take other writers, John Keats, Samuel Coleridge. So all they wrote their own manners. They wrote wherever their imagination led them. They didn't follow the rules and regulations of intellect, logic, reason. Rather, they broke the shackle and they used poetry for escapism. They used poetry for own purpose. They just idolize nature and getting inspiration from nature, they write whatever they want. Take example of John Keats, Wordsworth, Coleridge, P.B. Shelley, and other writers, other poets. They wrote their own way. They wrote whatever they want, and even they wrote wherever their imagination led them. So there are some common traits of this romanticism age. If we talk about the romanticism characteristic of romanticism or romantic age, they wrote about nature, they talk about supernaturalism, industrial revolutions, escapism, medievalism, imaginative, instinctive ideas, and they talk about the solitudeness, meditations, primary and secondary imaginations. So Wordsworth and Coleridge, they had great name in romantic age. In romantic poetry, they got great name because due to lyrical ballad as well as biographia, literaria by Samuel Coleridge. So they got good impact in poetry, especially in romanticism. William Blake, P.B. Shelley, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, they were all poet of nature. They love nature somehow. Talk about John Keats, he idolized nature because nature is having beauty and he idolized beauty. Talk about Wordsworth, he takes nature as a healer, soother, comforter, and he worships nature. Talk about Coleridge, he also considered divine power and he also considered nature as a guide, soothing, comforting, and like that. Take about Shelley also take lesson from nature, and nature is leading, inspiring, and guiding, and healing, and all that. So this way, poets belong to romantic age, they get inspiration from nature, and nature lead them to write poetry. So this way they consider nature living being reality and guide, soothe, comfort, heal, and direct them towards good directions, give them way, teach them way, guide them. It's also a religious for them, and having a divine power to lead, to instruct, to teach, to reflect, to soothe. So all these elements are nature, and nature guides them to write. I hope you will like this short lecture, because it tells overview of a romantic era and romantic poetry. If you still feel some ambiguity, you may contact with us, and I will explain you all about romantic poetry. So once again, thanks. You are joining our group, and you are learning, and this way we are connected with linguistic and literature. Stay blessed and have a nice time. In the name of Almighty God, the gracious, the merciful. One of participants from our group, he or she has asked